Hello and welcome. This is me making up for the technical difficulties from earlier. So, if you are looking for how to help your student with autism, ADHD, dyslexia, PTSD, or anxiety, you are in the right place. My name is Erin Baker, and I'm going to take you through this today. So, this is really all about helping your students being heard, seen, and oh my gosh, even encouraging them to thrive. So, a little bit about me. Baker Street Student Success. I am the founder and head coaching consultant of Baker Street Student Success, and I have been, working with students, parents, and teachers, and practitioners, and professionals, and stuff like that for over a decade, and it's been thousands, right? Thousands of students. Um, and I've also taught classes, and I have taught classes of all ages, like all the way down to itty bitty pre-K, and up through junior high, through high school, through college, beyond college. Older students who are trying to learn about technology, all that other kind of stuff, right? So I have worked with people in the professional world and people who are just students. So I work with a lot of people. And I've also been a parent during that time. That's my kiddo right there in the picture with me. I forced him to smile because he's a teenager. So he's like, smiling hurts me. I'm like, okay. Um, and honestly, what I have learned through all of that learning and all of that experience is what works and what doesn't about learning. Um, and the keys to anyone's ability, this is what I've learned. This is the biggest thing that you're going to hear me geek out about and everything else like that. The biggest thing to helping people succeed, those are the things that are frequently overlooked. And again, we're talking about the education system or the workplace. And that's mindset, motivation, habits, and what I think is most important is how people individually learn. And so these are some of the things that I geek out about a lot. All right. So, one of the ways to help you get the most out of today's webinar, and as you can see there, unlock your rock star status, is one, take notes. Yeah, just take them. Just take notes. In another webinar, I'll tell you about my geek theories about taking notes and the best ways to take notes and retain information, but that's another one. Next is ask questions. Yeah, ask questions. Even if you're not here live, totally okay, but ask questions, okay? And then remember that these lessons, even though they might seem like they're geared towards a certain age group or anything else like that, they can be applied to students of any and all ages. And that's whether that's yourself or students you're working with or your own kiddos. Okay. And then lastly, consider scheduling a complimentary exploratory call where we'll go over your specific needs. Maybe you have a question that wasn't covered in the content, or you're wondering how do you apply something specifically to your situation and your student situation. Schedule a call. Man, I love talking to people. I love helping people figure this stuff out. So please reach out. I want to talk to you. Okay, I promise. All right. So I love to start these things off with a quote because it helps me just get in the mindset and the mode of what I'm doing. And so for this week's, I try to make people feel loved and wanted because I know what it's like to not feel loved and wanted. And that's really about I feel passionate about if you're going to help someone, um, you need to be able to put yourself in their shoes. You need to be able to take them by the hand and tell them the truth when you say, I've been where you are and I've made it out the other side. So So that's where I'm coming from on this, and I'm all about taking care of people and loving on them. So, all right. So today we're going to talk about 6 different things. We are going to start with layers, and then we're going to talk about spoons. No, we're not in a baking class. And then we're going to talk about defense mode. And then we're really going to start to get into tips about observation, anticipating, and regulating your own emotions. Ooh! Can't wait to get started. All right, let's take a look. So the first one is about layers. And it's layers, but really is that impacts our ability to recover from stimulus. And you could think of stimulus as like a trigger or a stress or something like that, right? So all of us, every single person, have layers to ourselves that impact our ability to cope and recover from stressors, okay, when stressful things happen. Some of those things are previous traumas that we've had, how we were brought up, our own personality and how we handle things, and then our daily and ongoing health. Honestly, I'm a little bit sick right now, and that impacts my ability to handle stresses and also to recover from them. And then our world outlook. Do you have more of a pessimistic world outlook, or do you have more of an optimistic world outlook? And lastly, our own individual skills on being able to handle stress, regulate our emotions, and taking care of ourselves. Because all of that together, all of those layers impact how we show up. They impact how we handle stress when it comes up, and then how we recover, how soon we recover, or how well or not well we recover from stressors. So here's, I'm going to geek out a little bit on a chart for you, okay? And stay with me. I promise it'll all make sense. Okay, so here on the bottom here, you're going to see your average person. And you'll notice up at the top that we're going to talk about average people who have been impacted by the world since COVID, and then neurodiverse people. So those are people with ADHD, autism, anxiety, dyslexia, PTSD, and the like. That's neurodiverse or neurospicy, as some people like to say. Okay? So all of us start over here with our starting ability to handle stress. Okay? So the higher the number, the less our ability to handle stress. Okay? So average people start with, pretty decent ability to capacity to handle stress. And then a stimulus hits, or a trigger. Remember, we're thinking stimulus or trigger. Something happens. And then our stress levels go up. Okay, so when your stress levels go up, you lower your ability to handle stress. Make sense? Okay. And then how long we're activated or triggered can increase our stress. And so here you see the average person, they have a moderate increase in how long they stay triggered or stay activated. And then when they come back down here to recovery, they end up in pretty much the same place that they started. So they end up being able to handle stress, cope with stress, and then recover afterwards about the same as when they started. So now let's take a look at the second group of people. This is the average person who has been impacted by the world since COVID. So all of us that were not babies, that lived through COVID and the lockdown and everything else like that, and the changes in the world since then, right? We have been so heavily impacted by COVID. COVID has changed our lives and how we operate So much so that it impacts our stress levels and our ability to handle stress. So the average person who is now living since being affected by the world having COVID, starts at a higher stress level. And remember, over here where you start, the higher the number, the lower your ability to handle stress as it comes up. Okay, so higher the number, lower the ability. And then you'll notice when that stimulus or trigger hits, not only does your stress level go up and your ability go down, but look and compare these two lines from the average person to the person after COVID. How quickly or how severe you're impacted by stress or stimulus is way larger, is way more significant than it used to be before COVID. So our ability to cope has gone down drastically. We hear so much now about mental health and our ability to handle stressors and everything else like that. And this shows that trend. And then also how long we're activated or how long we're triggered, how long we're in that stressful mindset takes us even higher on the stress scale and lowers our ability to cope and recover. Then, here's the first time I want you to notice down here at the end point in your recovery, your average person now living in the world post-COVID, in their recovery from that stress or from that trigger, they end up with a higher stress level and a lower ability to cope than where they started with. So messed up, right? Hey, mental health and stress is a thing. Okay, so this last group, and the whole reason I'm geeking out about this, okay, the whole purpose of today's webinar. So people who are neurospicy start with an even higher number. And look at the space between these numbers, okay? Even higher number, which means even lower ability to handle stress, to cope with it, and then to recover from it afterwards, okay? Then that stress, that stimulus, that trigger hits, and holy bananas, they're up the mountain up there. And then how long they're activated, oh, holy cow, look at how high that goes. And then when they recover, when they finally get to recovery, look at where they started and where they ended. Yeah, their ability to process, to handle, to cope before a trigger their ability was higher before they experienced it, and then even after they've recovered, right? So when they recover, they're not recovering completely. Yeah, so messed up. And here's where all of this leads to and comes to, right? Is that according to the intense world theory and studies that the nervous system itself, individuals with neurodiversities can, and frequently do, feel some sensations and emotions differently and more intensely than the average person. More intensely. So how you react or how that trigger impacts you is much more intense in a neurodiverse person. Okay. So all this neuro, geeko stuff, right? So let's get back into like, what does that mean? All right, here we go. Hang in there. I know, you're doing great. So this all translates into spoons. Not our baking spoons. However, spoons is this really amazing theory that was not created, but finally written down and formalized in 2003. And spoon theory talks about that spoons is a metaphor, okay? So spoons is a metaphor for how we describe and measure how much physical and mental capacity each of us has on a daily basis to get through the day. Okay. You could call it energy, but that kind of misses the physical and mental aspects, because energy frequently can just be thought of as exhaustion or as lack of sleep, right? So this is really about our capacity mentally and physically to be able to make it through the day. So if we say the average person has 10 spoons to make it through the day, right? It takes 1 spoon to do this, it takes 1 spoon to do that, it takes 3 spoons to do that. And they have 10 spoons in order to make it through the day. Obviously, the less you take care of yourself or regulate your emotions on a regular basis, the fewer spoons you're going to be able to have. But the average person, even those with all of those layers that we talked about starting back a few slides ago, has 10 spoons. Okay. That means that they probably end up the day with 3 to 5 spoons. So, hey, they've got some spoons to spare. Technically, they could push themselves further, and they wouldn't be dipping into tomorrow, basically tomorrow's spoons, right? The person with neurodiversity, which remember, frequently people with neurodiversity, it's hidden, it's invisible issues that they may have, struggles that they may have. They may be really freaking good at masking guilty. And that has an even greater impact. But for the average person who has 10 spoons, a person with neurodiversity would have 5 spoons. So let's say it takes the average person 7 spoons in order to make it through a tough day with, triggers and things like that. So 7 spoons, right? And they still have 3 spare. So a neurodiverse person has to take at least the exact same number, 7. Wait, we started with 5, now we're in negative numbers, right? And what happens when a neurodiverse person goes into negative spoons? They're pushing themselves into burnout. They're borrowing from tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And so whereas your average person may end up being really tired at the end of the day, a neurodiverse person is wiped out for a week. This has significant impact on their ability to interact with you, whether that is as a parent, as a family member, as a teacher, educator, a boss, employer, random stranger that you encounter on the road, right? Spoons drastically impacts their capability to cope. All right. So here's why that matters. Because people who can't cope, people who do not have enough spoons, end up in defense mode on the regular. So first of all, defense mode, right? Just in case you were wondering what it is, it's a state in which someone is scared, frustrated, angry. They could be shut down or withdrawn. And this is anyone. Any person can get in defense mode. You may be reminded of situations in your life where someone has said, "Are you being defensive?" Or, "You don't need to be so defensive. You're in defense mode," right? And the reason you feel defensive or you're in defense mode is because you feel attacked in some way. Like the world is trying to get you, or this person who's arguing with you, right? You can recognize this in others because you might see, I don't want to do it. Or they're arguing. Or they appear to have a really short fuse. Like, why are you getting so upset over dumb little things, right? Simple things. This is stupid. Here's why it matters. Anyone who is in defense mode, and remember, this can be any one of us gets into defense mode. Anyone who's in defense mode is vastly, See how that's capitalized? Vastly less capable of thinking rationally and regulating themselves. So you could be the smartest person in the world and tell someone the exact best way to be successful or to win 800 cajillion fulfillion $1,000,000. They're not going to hear you. They can't think rationally, no matter what you do, because it doesn't have to do with you. They are in defense mode. And that means they are in fight, flight, or fawn mode. Fawn is the freezing. And literally, I want you to imagine a caveman being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, okay? They feel that when they're in defense mode. And how this applies to our neurospicy people is they are in defense mode. They feel like they're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger the vast majority of the time. Seriously. So a lot of times they are not able to hear you when you say something, even though it makes absolute and complete total logic. And maybe on another day they might be able to hear what you're saying or process and things like that. But when they are in that active defense mode, they can't. So, what the heck do we do? So, number one is about being in observation mode. And this, I really like to think about it as, being a scientific observer. So, if you think about a scientist is not about making inferences. It's not about making guesses. It's not about drawing conclusions or anything else like that, right? This caused this. No. This is about simply what do you see? What behaviors do you see? And gathering those facts, not opinions, remember? So not drawing conclusions or anything else like that. Just what do you see that you can behaviorally describe? So when this trigger happens, this result happens. This result should not be, by the way, I get angry or, something like that, right? I mean, it could be, and that would tell you something about you, but not your student. So write these observations down like a scientist from a very cold and removed perspective. And then the reason you write them down is because in the future, you can actually look back at your observations and note any trends, which will be incredibly important in our next tip. And then, depending upon the age and the ability or awareness of the student, encourage them to participate in observing themselves. Now, first of all, starting off, they're going to be horrible at it because, they're in defense mode. So they're not rational. They're not able to, disconnect thoughts from feelings. It's so incredibly difficult. And that's one of the reasons why it's incredibly important to help them develop those skills, develop the ability to observe themselves. That's how, one, they can become advocates for themselves, and two, they can continue to grow and get better in their skills and in success, which is what we want, right? Okay, so we've been doing our observations. That's tip one. Tip two, anticipating. So this is just based on your observations, remember? So we're not drawing any conclusions or anything else like that, but just based on your observations, try to plan ahead for any trigger points that come up. And honestly, as much as possible, try to avoid them. Do your students get upset when they don't have very specific directions written down in front of them that they can refer to? If they get upset and freak out and don't do the work or anything like that, then that is an observation that you can anticipate, right? That's a trigger you can anticipate with your observation, right? And that's something you could do something about. That's something very intentional you could do, right? And then here's the deal though. We cannot just avoid every single possible trigger. It's just not possible. It's just not a thing. We do not live in a world like that. And so the next two things are specifically about helping your student develop awareness of these triggers for themselves. Like, yeah, when this happens or when you encounter this, you always shut down or you always go into avoidance mode or things like that. And then if it's appropriate, help your student develop healthy coping skills for addressing these triggers, either before or as they come up. And then our last tip for today is about regulating emotions. And I don't mean our students' emotions. I mean our own. One of the worst things that can happen, and I know you can think of a time that you've seen somebody do this, because we've all seen it. And perhaps some of us can think of times where we have done it ourselves. But the worst thing you can do in an emotional situation is escalate the situation, because the student or your child or your coworker or your boss is causing you to lose your effectiveness. Now, when I say lose your effectiveness, I mean you raise your voice. I mean you say things you shouldn't say. I mean you yell or whatever it is, right? And I'm not saying that those aren't valid. They very much are valid. And if your purpose is to help your student be successful, you raising your voice, you yelling, those kinds of things, right, are not effective in what it is you're trying to achieve. So, the more you can regulate your own emotions and honestly be very aware of your own triggers. What is it that causes you to just lose your crap on somebody for like, ooh? You know, honestly, I hate repeating myself. And it's so incredibly funny because I can repeat myself once, sometimes twice, but it's extremely mathematical. So here's I'll give you the scenario. Okay, are you ready? All right. So my son has selective hearing, but also he has attention issues and things like that, right? So I will say something. Elijah, please empty the dishes. And that will be a minute. Elijah, huh? Please empty the dishes. I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. What did you say? Ah! It's like, you know, I can repeat myself that one, but then it's like a flash anger if I have to do it again. So being aware of that, I can do some things to prevent myself from getting in the way of being effective, right? So one of the things that I do is I stop and that pause allows me a moment to re-regulate myself and then to say it again calmly. So it's really important for us to be effective if we want to help other people be more effective, be more successful. You know what? Now is the time for your freebies. Tell you what, there was so much technical difficulties today that if you're watching this replay, just type yes in the comments, okay? If you type yes in the comments, I will absolutely send you the free guides for today. Today's free guides I'm really excited about. So the first one is about how to overcome overwhelm. And this is not only for yourself, but for your neurospicy students that live with you or that you work with, helping them overcome that overwhelm and paralysis that happens and can put them in defense mode, which makes them less effective. And then the other guide that we have is about how to create an about me. This is a really great snapshot, essentially, of if you're in the K-12 system, an IEP or a 504. It's a great snapshot of that to give to teachers and people who interact with your student. And if you have a neurospicy student who works with other people or rides a bus or anything else like that, no matter what their age is, because after the K-12 system in school, you no longer have an IEP or a 504 plan, but this still may be really necessary information for people who are working with you or your students. So it's really great for employers and things like that as well. This is an about me. So it's really cool. It's very simple. It's very easy to follow, and it's very friendly in a way that doesn't out a person in a negative or embarrassing way. And then lastly, oh my gosh, you do not have to do this alone. Okay? I am here. I am here, and there are other resources out there as well. And so if you're interested in getting help, like, let's talk. Just seriously reach out to me. Just type talk in the chat, and I'll reach out to you. And you can tell me what's going on, and I'll see what I can do to help. I have access to a ton of resources that I can help you navigate and everything else like that, okay? You are not alone. You are not alone, right? That's where I always go with that one. All right. So, thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for watching this video and for spending this time with me. Your support allows me to do exactly what I want to do, which is making the world a better place one moment at a time. This is exactly what I want to do with my life. And if you haven't already, please make sure you join our Facebook group. It's called Coaching Students to Their Best Learning Potential. There's a poop ton of resources like these, webinars free every week, free resources and guides and everything else like that. So dang, if you haven't yet, get on this train and join this Facebook group. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being graceful with technical difficulties, and I'll see you next week. Bye.